Whenever anybody mentions martial arts, the first thing that comes into mind is karate, judo, taekwondo, and sometimes Chinese kung fu. That's what comes into mind whenever anybody speaks about martial arts.
Right. And these are the forms which are very famous these days. And thanks to Olympics, now judo, karate, and taekwondo are Olympic sports. Judo has moved beyond just martial arts. It's now a category of sports which is very well recognized and understood. The movies have made these martial art forms very famous. All the macho characters in Chinese movies or even Hollywood movies are very inspired by martial arts. In Bollywood now we have superstars such as Vidyut Jamwal, who is like an epitome of a martial artist. And in his social media, he really depicts himself as somebody who is very fond of martial arts. The recent movies of Vidyut Jamwal is like Force and Commando, and he's a great action superstar of Bollywood these days. Oh, it's very interesting to see, but only a handful of people, like, of course, you recognize, but only a handful of people realize that, okay, judo and karate are actually two different forms. Because when I was in Delhi, right, in Delhi, boys be like, oh, judo karate janta hai. That means, okay, he knows martial art. But they don't realize that these are like two different forms, although from the same country. So judo and karate both are from Japan.
But I do remember having to attend some taekwondo classes, forced to attend taekwondo classes during our PE, physical education period. And it mostly, you're right, it used to be either karate or taekwondo or judo, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not enjoy it that much. Sports day, we used to have like a performance or a show kind of a thing that those kids who have learned martial arts during the year, they will be kind of performing and showcasing their skills.
Exactly. I used to do that in school as well. And I used to be the guy in front and do a flying kick to break some matka or hook kicks and like do a full split. On annual days, it's a big thing, right? It's very exciting to see all that. But it is well understood and accepted throughout the world that these forms of martial arts spread from China to Japan and Korea with Buddhism. And it is known that the Shaolin temple was the place where Kung Fu was practiced. And Kung Fu is the martial art which later got transformed into judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, and all of that happened alongside the spread of Buddhism in these regions. But interestingly, some people do know now, but many people still do not know that the Shaolin Kung Fu was brought into Shaolin temple by a saint who was known as Bodhidharma. It is believed that Bodhidharma was from India, southern part of India, and he was an expert in Indian form of martial art, which is Kalaripayat. Many Indians, unfortunately, still do not know that Kalaripayat is the mother of all renowned martial arts known today, which is heavily practiced today in Kerala. And the Bollywood actor I was referring to, Vidyut Jamwal, is actually promoting Kalaripayat in his social media a lot. And thanks to him, many people have started to realize about what Kalaripayat is. There recently in Tamil Nadu, in Tamil language, there was this movie, Seven Om Arivu. I think I butchered the name, but this was the movie where there was a clip about how Bodhidharma went to China and showed them the ways of martial arts. And that's where people really got excited about, oh, is this what is Kalaripayat? And Kalaripayat is extravagant, right? It has swords, it has different kinds of weapon, it has grappling, it has like bare hand fighting techniques, everything. So that is also very famous nowadays, thanks to all this which was happening in like the movies and like with stars like Vidyut. But India has so many other martial art forms as well. You're Punjabi, right? Do you know about Gatka? So it is a Punjabi form of martial art where I don't know. Ghatka is Nirmalji. Have you watched like Sikhs performing a kind of martial art with swords, and they have different style of weapons?
Yes, I happen to watch it. I mean, because the Sikh community, for example, I think they have this Hola festival during the holy time, I think so, in which the Nihang Sikhs are practicing various kinds of martial arts, and it's like quite lively type of thing. Like you can hear a lot of a lot of wild movements and things which it's quite interesting spectacle to watch them performing these martial arts, but I didn't know that what it was called as.
Yeah, so this is one form of martial art which is very close to the Sikh culture. The community is a warrior class community, and the people who they say like Amrit Chakte hain, those people are usually the ones who are presenting this performance, according to my understanding, and it's beautiful to watch. And it's so they have very very scary stunts and very dangerous weapons which they are like using and showing how to use. It's amazing. Go back in India, Agni Puran is arguably the earliest extent of manual of Dhanur Vidya and war forms. Also, there are
That's right.
like several Vedic literatures. You will find a reference to martial arts, including Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda. And also there are
Wow.
numerous references in of Indian martial arts are found scattered across through Mahabharata. There have been vivid descriptions of martial arts found in between Arjuna and Karna. There have been sword fights, fights with fist and unarmed battles, even clean fist fighting. A very famous form of martial art was Mallayuddh, which was
Right.
yeah, Bhima has done Mallayuddh several times. Even Krishna has been talked about how he was with a lean body, he was very strong and in Mallayuddh. So these are the most ancient forms of martial arts, which are presented in the most ancient text, which is understood by the world. Also, several other regions of India, right? They have their own kind of martial art as well. So Tamil Nadu has something called Silabam. Mardani Khel is Maharashtrian, and there is a martial art form called Squay, Squay, which is a Kashmiri martial art form. Yeah. And also Manipur has its own form of martial arts. So several regions of India has their own form of martial arts. I think we as Indians should celebrate our martial art forms and at least be mindful and have that knowledge that we have so much of our own and we should celebrate that.
I think that the most important point that we see is that in our history books, our kids are not learning much about this thing. Like, for example, you mentioned about Bodhidharma, who went from the south, he went to China. Of course, he was a Buddhist monk. At the same time, it's mentioned in Shaolin history, the Shaolin monk, the Shaolin temple in Henan province in China. It's clearly mentioned that Bodhidharma, came from Bharat to spread Buddhism, and he spread the yogic techniques with which the Shaolin monks were able to develop Chinese Kung Fu, which is considered as the best form of Kung Fu in China. But all of these facts are known to the Chinese, and most interestingly, Bodhidharma also went to Japan, where Okinawa, because karate basically originates in Okinawa, and of course it came from China. But at the same time, the legend over there is that Bodhidharma went from Bharat to China, and then from there he went to Okinawa, and then over there karate developed and so on.
Yeah.
So all of these facts are known to the Japanese, they are known to the Chinese, but unfortunately, most of our kids in India, they have absolutely no idea about it because it's not taught in our history. Nobody teaches about it.
True. Even in schools, we just learn Taekwondo, and people don't really understand. But with learning these forms of martial art, they also bring in their culture. So if you're practicing Taekwondo, you will practice and count in Korean. if you're practicing karate or judo, you will count in Japanese language.
Correct.
So those subtleties are not understood very well, and therefore they don't understand the larger impact of such.
Exactly. So I think that it's imperative upon the authorities and for different state governments to actually incorporate in their educational syllabuses all the glories of ancient Bharat. As I mentioned, for example, that it's not just Japan, as you mentioned correctly, Korea, even Taekwondo also is an origin. I mean, is something which is India's contribution, because again, Bodhidharma comes in the picture. And guess what? It's not just restricted to Japan, China, and Korea, but even in Malaysia, they have a legend that Bodhidharma also visited over there, and even their martial arts also are influenced by Bharat. Even in Japan, they have this kata kind of a jujutsu type of thing also has its origin in India itself also. So again, as I mentioned, till we don't actually think about imparting this kind of knowledge to our kids, it's impossible for anyone to learn about it. And that's why people will only look at karate and taekwondo and would like to learn them rather than Kalari Payattu or all the various Bharatiya martial arts that you mentioned.
Exactly. And you mentioned about jujitsu. Jujitsu is the primitive, basically the parent form of judo. So judo was driven out of jujitsu, and jujitsu is the original form, which is much harsher and much stronger in a martial art context. Secondly, you did mention about celebrating your own martial arts, right? How Chinese Kung Fu became famous is there is a golden era of movies, Chinese movies, which were rooted in Kung Fu. These superstars like Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, Jet Li, all of these came from that era, and it's heavily celebrated all across the world today because Chinese people first started celebrating their own culture.
The reason is because, as you mentioned about this, so actually it's basically Hong Kong movies, Hong Kong films which popularized Kung Fu across the world. It was famous in China, of course, definitely. But as far as internationalizing it, they had this Golden Harvest studio in the 1960s, 1970s, which produced a host of Chinese movies which were grounded in Chinese Kung Fu. So their main target audience was because there was a very large Chinese community in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and so on. So even though they had been living outside China for so many generations, they still held a lot of affinity, a lot of affection towards China. So keeping that audience in mind, Golden Harvest Studios had produced a lot of movies which highlighted the Chinese Kung Fu form. And of course, as you mentioned, Bruce Lee came in much later, but there were a lot of actors who were there before. And once after that, it became popular across the world. Probably Bruce Lee was the one who because of whom it became so popular in the West, because he had his own, he of course added up a little bit his own styles to the Chinese Kung Fu, but the origin was of course Chinese Kung Fu itself. So I think that this is the big issue with our Bollywood movies, so our Indian movies, for example. When they look at the Indian audience, they only offer to them locales in Switzerland or romantic type of movies of that Yash Chopra types and so on, which is okay. But the point is that they don't think much about highlighting Bharatiya culture, because looking at the fact that there's such a big diaspora across the world, like in the US and UK and so many countries across the world. So if they kept in mind that this community also would like to see positive aspects about our culture, so they could have shown this, let's say, for example, Bharatiya martial arts or different facets of Indian culture. And after that, that would have become popular even among the non-Indian audiences across the world,
Definitely.
So we can learn a lot from the Chinese, how the Hong Kong movie industry popularized Chinese culture.
Yeah, the global Indian diaspora is such a big asset which is not used as much as possible.
I was just saying that are there any institutions within India that are kind of apart from the education system, imparting this kind of knowledge into the youth of India?
Like centrally speaking, there is Martial Art Academy of India, which is supposed to have the governing body, and then every different form of martial art has their own government recognized body to it. So Taekwondo has and Judo has, and these players do also get this opportunity that if they play for the nation, they are able to secure a government job and whatnot. But is there a government organized supported body which is supporting Indian martial art forms? In my knowledge, there is none. Maybe Nirmal ji knows something about it, but I don't know.
I'm not too sure about it. I think that this kind of thing has to work at all levels, right? So first of all, the government has to do its part. I mean, the governmental bodies which are promoting, let's say, martial arts, for example, Bharatiya martial arts, they have to do it in a more a friendly way, something which can relate to the audience, to the young people, for example. If you do it in a lecture kind of thing, nobody's willing to listen. So it has to be done through the medium that youngsters understand. So that
Right.
is their part. Then you have to bring in celebrities, people who are sort of known faces among the youth. Let's say, for example, cricket stars, or it could be celeb movie stars or whatever. If those people are shown to be practicing Bharatiya martial arts, or if they have been shown to say that, well, they consider Kalaripayattu as good as karate or better than karate or whatever. So if that is a very powerful way of actually getting the message across to youngsters. And of course, as I said, the schools which are, if let's not talk about private schools. Okay, maybe private schools may be having, they may not be interested for now, but at least in government schools, the government can, there's nothing stopping the government from promoting Bharatiya martial arts, at least in their schools, right?
Definitely.
To begin with. What
Definitely.
do you think, Palakji?
No, yeah, I do agree with that, but also there needs, because like Kailash mentioned that there is so much of knowledge in the scriptures, so we kind of need to also go back there and dig in and see those people who are like well versed in Sanskrit. Maybe they could also pick up something from there and start promoting that. So that could be one aspect to it as well.
Very good. Yeah, excellent. I agree.
Another positive thing that I can think about is now India is gaining traction in Olympics of wrestling games, right? And that really helps because wrestling is so inherent in the culture and all across India. So if we win in the global platform, then people will try to come and see, okay, what akhadas are all about, and how do
Yeah.
people train in akhadas, and what the world can learn from it. I think that is something which is to be celebrated also.